Is that collection supposed to be real, or are you moonlighting as an actor? The judge's words dripped with contempt, slicing through the uneasy hush that filled the courtroom. I remember every sneer, every sideways glance Judge Richard Eldridge sent my way from his throne behind the bench. His suit looked tailored, expensive, the type only worn by people who have never seen a single hungry day in their lives. It must have cost more than the battered motorcycle I'd sworn would outlast me. I stood in front of him, just an old man, 84 years behind me, a lifetime carved into the lines of my face, my back held resolute and straight, a habit from days that this judge, with all his bravado, could never comprehend. The courtroom was chilly, echoing with old secrets. I had on my favorite denim jacket, so faded it was nearly white at the elbows. Over my heart, 3 neat rows of ribbons sat, and beneath them 1 medal on a blue ribbon, shining despite the years. These clearly were the targets of his mockery. "My client's service record doesn't matter here," my young defender Emily Grayson said. She couldn't have been older than 30, but there was steel in her voice and a flush on her cheeks. Judge Eldridge didn't even bother to look at her. He just waved a hand, his attention fixed on me. "Oh, I'm sure it's irrelevant," he mused, voice dripping with sarcasm. "But honestly, it's quite a set you've got there for someone who can't remember how to obey a stop sign. Let me guess, you bought them at a pawn shop. Costume jewelry to impress your coffee buddy's old-timer?" A murmur fluttered through the gallery, people waiting for their chance to stand in the same spot I did, some of them stifling laughs. Most of them just stared, uncomfortable, pity mingling with the shame of watching a public shaming unfold. I kept silent. My gaze stayed level, fixed on the faded state flag behind the judge. I felt nothing, not anger nor embarrassment. Instead, my mind wandered to a different place entirely, a place of stillness, forged from decades of storms weathered. "I asked you a question, sir," the judge prodded, his voice now rising. I could see he enjoyed this, the cheap comfort of power over strangers. "Will you answer, or is that hardware just for show?" Emily tensed beside me, her entire frame humming with outrage. "Your Honor, this is disrespectful. Mr. Carter is a veteran and—" "Respect is earned, Counselor," Eldridge snapped, voice cracking like a whip across the room. "And in my courtroom, a chest full of trinkets doesn't buy it. Last time, Mr. Carter, where'd you get those medals?" I turned my eyes from the old flag and met his stare, letting the quiet settle like dust. My answer was simple, honest. "They were given to me." That small phrase seemed to ignite something in Judge Eldridge, a furious need to press, to goad. "Given to you by who? The costume shop clerk? Let's be honest here, because I'm tired of these war stories from men who think a dusty uniform gives them a free pass. You sped, you ran a stop sign, and you think you're immune because of your old army coat?" His words were meant to sting, and I could feel the courtroom tighten around us, tension building with every insult he hurled at me. More than once I caught sight of my hands, gnarled and spotted with age, resting steadily on the defense table. I didn't fidget, and I didn't flinch. I let his anger break over me like the tide on stone. "Remove that jacket," he barked suddenly. A gasp rolled across the room. "This isn't about a ticket anymore," Emily objected, trembling ever so slightly. "You can't." "I can," Judge Eldridge shot back, his voice deadly serious. "This is my courtroom, and it will be treated with the respect it deserves. Take it off, Mr. Carter, or I'll hold you in contempt." The bailiff, a mountain of a man used to tension, stepped up. For a moment he met my eyes, uncertainty flickering there, hesitant, even apologetic. I didn't meet his gaze. I simply looked down at the medals, my focus lingering on the blue-ribboned one, memories washing over me like a distant song only I could hear. My answer? Silence. Absolute, unwavering silence. "Fine," Judge Eldridge spat, the color climbing up his cheeks, making him blotchy with frustration. "Bailiff, add a contempt charge, $500 fine." His eyes burned into me, but he wasn't finished. He jabbed a finger at the medal, a golden star hanging just below the ribbons, especially that one. The audacity to wear a fake Medal of Honor. Do you have any idea what that stands for? The sacrifice, the blood. It's an insult to every true hero who's worn the uniform. Suddenly, the courtroom seemed to dissolve. The judge's sharp words faded to a distant hum, replaced by the high whine of helicopter blades and the screams of wounded men. The smell of floor polish was gone. In its place, the stench of mud, sweat, and gunpowder filled my lungs. I wasn't standing on the old linoleum tiles, but wading through thick, sucking mud outside a town called Quan Loy. I saw Private Ramirez's terrified eyes as machine gun fire chewed the earth just inches from us. That blue ribbon, so bright, was the color of the midday sky peeking through the jungle canopy while I carried Ramirez on my back, his blood soaking into my uniform, my every step a gamble between life and death. That medal wasn't some bit of tin. It was the invisible weight of the lives I'd carried and sometimes lost. When I breathed again, I found myself back in that silent courtroom, only my breath was a little deeper, steadier than before. Around me, time tottered as if holding its own cautious breath. Emily watched everything. Fury simmered inside her as she looked from Eldridge's smug confidence to my worn hands, resting peacefully. In her trembling hand, the thin case file seemed lighter than the injustice flooding the room. Fred Carter, it read, a few past traffic tickets, nothing else. Under military service, I had marked simply, yes. No rank, no branch, no boasts. I was just a man who had done his duty. Opportunity flickered in Emily's eyes, a desperate idea, wild and fragile. While Judge Eldridge ranted to the stenographer, justifying his actions for the official record, she leaned toward me. "Mr. Carter," she whispered urgently, "is there anyone left from your old unit I should call?" I turned and met her gaze, not a spark of fear in mine, just an old, deep fatigue. I shook my head, barely moving. "It was a long time ago," I murmured. "Most are gone, miss. There must be someone," she pleaded, her eyes darting to a tiny crest pinned on my collar, one she didn't recognize. "I just need to get a document from my office," she said aloud. Eldridge didn't even look up. "Do what you need, counselor. Your client's not going anywhere." Emily shot from the room, heels clicking in a rhythm sharp as the judge's gavel. Out in the corridor, she ducked into an alcove, hands shaking. She had no file to fetch. She had that mysterious crest. Typing into her phone, "Army insignia, eagle over fortress tower." Immediately, results popped up. Special Forces, first group. Her breath snagged. This was no ordinary claim. Desperate, she searched for contact information. Public Affairs Office, Veteran Liaison, anything. At last, a number for Fort Excelsior, headquarters for first group. Emily dialed, knuckles white as she pressed her phone to her ear. "Fort Excelsior, Public Affairs," a voice answered, neutral and bored. "Emily Grayson. I'm a public defender in Dalton County. I have a client, an elderly veteran, being held in contempt. His name is Fred Carter. The judge insists his medals are fake." "Ma'am, we can't intervene in civil cases," came the rehearsed reply. "He's wearing the first group insignia," Emily blurted, gambling on her last card. "Please, his name is Fred Carter." Something shifted in the silence. The man's monotone vanished, replaced by alarm. "Could you spell that?" "Carter, first name Fred." Typing, then a sharp inhale. The next words crackled with urgency. "What courtroom?" "Where?" "Courtroom B, Dalton County Courthouse. Don't let Mr. Carter be moved." "Hold him there. We're coming now." The call ended. Emily stood frozen, the grave tone of that last command echoing through her. Miles away, that single phone call traveled further than Emily could imagine. The specialist wasted no time. He skipped up the chain, straight to the base commander, a decorated colonel who gripped his desk until the knuckles whitened at the familiar name, Fred Carter. Out came a single command, steel-edged with disbelief. Hold. Within 60 seconds, the colonel burst into the quarters of the only man who could make the whole base snap to. General James Adler, carved from granite, turned away from his paperwork with a glare. "Sir, we have a code sentinel." Adler detected the gravity instantly. That code, used only for men whose sacrifice demanded intervention, whose stories had become legend, hadn't been spoken aloud in years. "Who?" he growled. "Sergeant Major Fred Carter, sir." General Adler was out of his chair before his aide even finished. Logistics papers drifted to the floor, forgotten. A storm passed over the general's lined face. Doubt, then outrage, then sharp determination. "Where is he?" Adler demanded, already reaching for his uniform jacket. "Dalton County Courthouse, sir. Judge Eldridge is holding him for contempt. Claims he's wearing medals illegally, including the Medal of Honor." The colonel answered tightly, disgust brimming in each syllable. Adler's jaw clenched. "Get me a helicopter to nearest airstrip. Honor guard, full dress, wheels up 10 minutes ago. And dig up everything you can on this Judge Eldridge. Background, friends, any skeletons. Burn the phone lines, notify the Secretary of the Army. A living legend's being shamed by someone not fit to polish his shoes." There was no wasted motion. Adler's voice galvanized his staff into a hive of activity, orders cascading through the halls and crackling over secure lines. On a deeper level, something unseen awakened, a code of honor old soldiers lived by, binding generations across deserts, jungles, city streets. Meanwhile, in Courtroom B, the air hummed with an almost electric tension. Eldridge's chest swelled with the satisfaction of putting the insolent veteran in his place. His gavel hovered in his hand, ready to announce the final humiliation. Emily slipped quietly back to her seat beside me. Her face was pale, but resolve glinted in her eyes. She tried to meet my gaze, and for the first time I offered her a hint of a smile, brief, grateful. Eldridge ignored us and put on a show for the audience and his own ego. "Given your outright refusal to comply, Mr. Carter, and your apparent delusions about your so-called heroic past, I'm not just holding you in contempt. I question your mental competency. Therefore, I am ordering a 72-hour psychiatric evaluation. You'll be remanded to the county sheriff for transfer to the state hospital." I heard the words as if through deep water. The gavel lifted, poised above the bench to drop with the finality of a prison gate. But before Eldridge could deliver the blow, a disturbance erupted in the hall. The oak doors flew inward with a resounding crash, banging against the paneled walls. Gasps and startled cries rose all at once. Into the sudden hush 2 soldiers stepped, their uniforms impeccable. Every button and medal gleaming, posture so perfect they looked carved from marble. They flanked the doorway, motionless. An ancient gravity settled over the courtroom. Every eye turned, every breath held. Even Eldridge couldn't summon a word. Then came a third figure, a tall, broad-shouldered man whose dark green jacket bore enough ribbons and stars to tell an entire history of battlefields. General Adler walked straight down the aisle, each stride measured, deliberate. His boots hit the tile with the cadence of a slow drumbeat, each step heavier with meaning. He did not look at the judge or the trembling crowd. He walked with a singular purpose until he stopped just inches from my table. For a heartbeat, he and I simply stared at each other. No words passed, but a deep understanding flickered in the space between soldier and soldier, echoing years of hardship and brotherhood. General Adler suddenly snapped to attention, his salute so crisp it seemed to slice the thick silence. "Sergeant Major Carter," he declared, his voice rich and clear, filling every corner. "It is my deepest honor to stand in your presence, sir." For a long moment I did not move. But something inside, something forgotten, woke in me. I squared my tired shoulders, felt the years slip away for a breath, and returned his salute. The room transformed. Where once there had been a gauntlet of shame and accusation, now every head turned in awe and confusion. The spell broke with Eldridge's outrage. "What is going on here? Who are you people?" "I'm running lawful proceedings." General Adler lowered his hand only after I did. Now, his eyes met the judge's, and the easy warmth vanished, replaced by a chill that radiated clear to the back row. "The matter, Your Honor," Adler intoned, voice like distant thunder, "is that you stand before a hero of the Republic, and you are about to get an education in respect." Adler took a single step toward the bench, pulling a letter from his inner coat pocket. "You challenge this man's medals. Allow me to read the truth." The entire courtroom hung on General Adler's words as he unfolded the letter, each movement slow and deliberate. Eldridge, for once, had no retort. The audience was spellbound, watching the tall general who now commanded the space with an effortless authority that dwarfed the judge's posturing. Adler began to read, his voice unwavering and resonant. "Sergeant Major Frederick Carter, enlisted United States Army, 1957, served with honor and distinction for 32 years, 3 tours of duty in Vietnam, Delta Company, 5th Special Forces Group, Military Assistance Command, Vietnam, Studies and Observations Group." He paused, letting each word settle into the wood-paneled silence. "Awards and decorations," Adler continued, his eyes flashing with pride. "Bronze Star with Valor 4 times, Silver Star twice, Distinguished Service Cross, Purple Heart, awarded 5 times. With each accolade, the sense of astonishment rippled like a current through the gallery. People who had smirked or shifted uncomfortably now sat up straighter, their focus locked on me, on the story being pulled from the shadows of my old jacket. The general's tone softened as he focused on the most prominent medal, the one that had drawn so much scorn just moments before. "And this medal, the one Your Honor dismissed as a forgery, is the Medal of Honor. This is not a replica. It was awarded to then Staff Sergeant Carter for extraordinary heroism, above and beyond the call of duty." He glanced up, meeting Eldridge's eyes, and then read the citation, every syllable echoing in the stunned courtroom. "On February 17, 1969, near Quan Loy Province, Sergeant Carter, disregarding his own safety, charged 2 enemy machine gun nests, eliminating both positions, and then carried 4 wounded comrades over 200 meters of open ground under heavy fire to a medevac point. After ensuring his men's survival, he returned to the line and continued the fight until reinforcements arrived." General Adler folded the paper with care, returning it to his coat. "Sir, the medals worn by Frederick Carter represent more than medal. They symbolize courage, duty, sacrifice, the kind you cannot fathom from behind a bench." His voice now trembled with righteous anger. "This man's service and dignity outweigh the collective honor of this courthouse, yes, including you, Judge Eldridge. You sought to shame not just a person, but a living memory of what is best in us. And you failed." The room was silent. No one so much as shifted in their chair, the hush broken only by the soft clicks of a reporter's pen at the back, scribbling every word. Eldridge's complexion had faded to an ashen white, his mouth opening but unable to form sound. For the first time, real fear showed on his heavy features. General Adler turned away from the judge, his voice gentling. "Sergeant Major Carter, on behalf of the United States Army and a grateful nation, I deeply apologize for everything you have been subjected to today." He faced Eldridge again, his words dropping to a low, icy register. "As for you, Judge, it's clear you have a problem with honoring veterans. I've already spoken with your state's governor and the Judicial Review Board. They are very interested in what's been recorded here this morning. Your career may be much shorter than you planned." The finality in Adler's statement was irrefutable, a thunderclap closing the subject for good. I looked up at General Adler, then turned my gaze to Eldridge, who sat shrunken behind his great bench, his arrogance shriveled like paper over flame. The impulse for anger wasn't there. Instead, I saw just another man, lost in the fog of his own pride. Gently, I placed my hand on Adler's arm. James, I said quietly, surprising even myself with the steadiness in my tone. Mistakes are made. Sometimes they're awful, but they're just mistakes all the same. These medals, they aren't the point, they're reminders. The real lesson isn't about rank or ribbons. It's about treating people, whoever they are, with respect they deserve. That's all anyone needs to know. For an instant, the old courtroom melted away. I was not an old man standing in judgment, but a much younger version of myself, deep in the jungle under a sweltering sun. Kneeling beside a wounded enemy soldier, still almost a boy and terrified, I offered my last canteen of water without a second thought, because honor was never truly measured on the field. It was measured in compassion, in a moment where nothing separated one person from another, friend from foe. Cameras flashed as the reality of the moment set in, the hush giving way to whispers. Emily Grayson, her eyes damp, nodded in silent approval. Reporters scrambled now, pencils flying, phones recording. News of that morning would not just drift through Dalton County, but would jolt across the country like a bolt of lightning. The image of General Adler saluting an aging, unassuming veteran in a faded denim jacket became a symbol. A rallying cry for dignity, for honor that required no explanation. Judge Eldridge, once so secure in his position, found himself removed from the bench within weeks, a formal investigation erasing what was left of his once proud reputation. In response to the uproar, a new bill, unofficially dubbed Carter's Law, demanded that all public officials undergo training in respect, service, and understanding of military sacrifice. And General Adler, he made certain my traffic citation wasn't simply dismissed, but wiped from the record with a written apology from the state itself. None of it was what I wanted, though. I returned to small routines, my life returning to quiet, tinkering in my garage, meeting friends for early morning coffee, content in anonymity. But fate had one more small chapter left in this story. A postscript neither bitter nor boastful, the quiet, final measure of respect. About a month later, as summer began to wane, I found myself in my usual corner booth at the Silver Spoon Diner. Old vinyl seats cracked beneath me, sunlight streaming through smudged glass. My morning ritual hadn't changed. I nursed a black coffee, reading yesterday's newspaper, anonymity restored at last. The brass bell above the door chimed, drawing my attention away from the crossword. A man entered, hesitating just inside the doorway, eyes sweeping the diner as though searching for something he might never find. He wore a polo shirt and slacks. Ordinary enough, but something about the way he walked told of recent hardship. His shoulders hunched, every movement uncertain. It was Judge Eldridge. Without the towering robe and shield of his office, he was diminished, smaller than I remembered. He caught my eye and started in my direction, clutching his hat as if it might keep him grounded. "Mr. Carter," he said, his voice subdued, raw in a way that made the air seem heavier. Can I sit for a moment?" I nodded, sliding the opposite menu across the tabletop, letting it speak for me. Eldridge lowered himself slowly, like a man much older than his years. His eyes never met mine, remaining fixed on the formica edge of the table, searching it for courage. Silence stretched for several seconds. "I owe you an apology," he finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "What I did in that room, well, what I said, there's no excuse." His fingers fidgeted with the corner of a napkin. "I was arrogant. Cruel. I went too far. I'm sorry." I watched him, considering the man in front of me. Gone was the unyielding magistrate. In his place sat a human being stripped bare by his own actions. I sipped my coffee slowly, letting him sit with his shame before I answered. "I hear you're not on the bench anymore," I said plainly. "No." He managed a weak smile, half regret, half relief. "They made sure of that." "That's good," I remarked, tone neutral but not unkind. "A job like that, well, a man needs the heart for it." I pushed the menu closer. Try the coffee. It's worth the trouble. He looked up at me then, truly seeing me for the first time. The tension in his shoulders eased, the lines around his eyes softened. For a moment, we were just two men at a diner table, the gulf of past wrongs bridged by simple understanding and forgiveness. Eldridge breathed out, almost a laugh, and nodded. He accepted the menu, his hands finally steady. "Thank you," he murmured, glancing out the window at the world beginning to move beyond the glass. We sat in companionable silence, the kind that needs no explanation. In those quiet moments, something old and heavy lifted from both our hearts. There was no dramatic reconciliation, no grand gesture, just an unspoken truce sealed over battered mugs and the shared humility of mistakes made and lessons learned. As the day stretched on, I watched Eldridge finish his coffee, gather himself, and leave with a nod that spoke of a lighter burden. I returned to my paper and to my coffee, the world outside inching forward the way it always had. Stories like mine drifted into legend, hardly noticed at the time, but later called up whenever someone needed reminding that courage has many faces. If you passed by that little diner and saw me by the window, you'd never guess at the things I'd carried, or the lessons I'd learned, how the greatest honor is remembering, no matter what uniform you wear, that every stranger across the table has their own story and deserves respect. Heroes aren't made by medals or newspaper headlines. Real dignity is measured by the way we treat those who stand before us, especially when nobody's watching. If my story moved you, if you believe in honoring quiet valor, share it, pass it on. There are countless others out there just like me, walking quietly through this world, carrying stories worth remembering.